What's wrong, Annie?
I killed them. I killed them all. They're dead. Every single one of them. And not just the men, but the women. And the children, too. They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals. I hate them.
Do you expect me to talk?
Hello and welcome to episode 91 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm your host Becca and always joined by fellow Jedi Knights Chris, Dave and Charlie from Movie Drone. How are you guys doing?
I have a bad feeling about this.
Me too.
Good evening, folks.
Don't you just hate sand?
Gets everywhere.
It's rough and it's coarse.
And it gets in your fange.
Yeah, but having said that, women love a bit of sand banter. They tend to wear quite revealing outfits afterwards,
Yeah,
and I cop off with them.
Yeah.
Once I've softened them up with a bit of sand banter.
Yeah, if you really want to seduce an elderly, like not an elderly, but an older woman.
But Chris takes
how else are you meant to be?
That's an elderly woman.
Yes, but you know, if you want to...
19 at the time of filming, way too old for Chris.
So much of Chris's fruit corner. We've got Chris's dating tips.
I know, and Fruit Corner this week.
What I was going to say, oh yeah, if you want to seduce a lady, just talk about sand. It does the trick. And stare at her really creepily.
I'd kill whole races of people as well. Because you'll realise that, you know, it's human.
Yes, and...
Your love is real.
Also, go on rants about how if you ruled the world, like, no bad things would ever happen. Ever.
I think a nice speech in favour of dictatorship in front of a log fire works well.
How we should be all powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're whining about how it's not fair.
I think anyone listening tonight is just going to be irresistible to the gender of their choice at the end of their listening to this. Because we've got so many... We can tell you how love is formed. Good dialogue's important. We'll get back to that.
Obviously, once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away, this was how to do romance. Romance has since changed.
It's so out of keeping with the original trilogy. Now, the original trilogy did have, you know, its clunky dialogue here and there, but maybe it was better actors. I don't know. For whatever reason, the dynamic of Han and Leia is just miles above this. This is the worst Star Wars film in my view. I don't think it's even particularly close. I've got a few more positive things to say than I thought I would have to say, and we'll get to them. Largely from a comment from a conversation Charlie was having on Twitter last night, I think, where someone said about it being an attractive film, which Charlie just diplomatically clicked like on and had nothing more to do with. But actually, I thought, well, if somebody is pushed to say that as a comment, then I must consider that. And actually, the bits of the film that are really ugly are slightly fewer than I thought. And there are a few sequences that maybe look a bit better than I thought, held back by the technical standards of the time. But we've got a clear lead in this film who is appallingly unlikable, not even in an anti-hero sense. He's just a whiny little brat. Having heard Obi-Wan Kenobi in the original 1977 film talk about what a good friend he was, we see that they don't really like each other except for a sort of bit of forced banter in an elevator.
Yeah.
With one of the worst two bits. Ewan McGregor's quite good in this film, but there's two bits in this film where I just almost laughed out loud at how bad he was. And one was the little chuckle in the lift. And the other one is he went completely the other way, which was sort of Harry Enfield doing Tony Blair, I think, at a certain voice.
Or Tommy Lee Warner.
It was a little bit like that. Enough chit-chat, Anakin!
Enough chit-chat, Padawan.
Was that the bit in the speed chase?
Yes, he went completely the other way. And he made like a judo chop motion as he did.
I was going to mention this when we were talking about the film sequentially, but
let's say no more about it.
Okay.
Okay. Ewan McGregor's a lot better this week, mainly because he's given more to do. There are a couple of bits that really are clunky, but then for the most part, he's really pretty good. It was on this viewing, I have been reminded, yes, Christopher Lee is a Sith apprentice because he's got the name Darth Tyrannus. So yeah, it's awful. It's overstuffed. It's ridiculously digital. Its action sequences are horrendous and look really cartoony. And it shows up in places what a terrible director that George Lucas could be at times, for all his considerable pluses as a creator. As I say, we've got the stiffest, and not in the fun, hey, let's experiment way, love story you'll ever see. It's just horrendous dialogue all the way through from two people who are probably, I would gather at this point in their lives, probably had never been in love themselves, so they brought no real life experience to it, and also they have zero chemistry. And the film is at once empty and completely overstuffed, and I can't really address that till we go through it. It's another one that feels like an enormous amount of busy work to get us to next week. So there's loads happening, but I'm really not sure that there's really much point to it as we get towards the end. And watching it with the commentary, I wish I had £1 for every time the commentators, because it was like a group one, how many times the commentator said the word computer. They're still back in the era where they're just so excited they can do this stuff in a computer. And it's just overkill. So for me, worst Star Trek film of the series. It would be,
oh, really? I'm surprised.
Yeah, it's crap as a Star Trek film, in my opinion. But
Star Wars film.
Didn't see the Enterprise once.
Yeah.
I think it's still the best Star Trek film in Into Darkness.
That's a real tough one. But yeah, no. Slip of the tongue aside, it's also the worst Star Wars film, in my view.
Just to quickly ask a question, does Christopher Lee, or Count Dooku, stupid name by the way, why does it mean he's apprentice? Because he's got a Darth name?
Because there are only two. And Darth is a Sith name, there's always a master and an apprentice. He is Sidious's apprentice in this film.
Okay.
People who know more than me can argue. I'm not gonna fight that
that's right.
corner
That's
too hard.
right. Yeah.
But that has to be right. And I think we've forgotten about that last week because he's always referred to as Dooku. The Darth Tyrannus thing is kind of almost tangential.
I just thought they were like both in the market because last week he had Maul, like Sidious had Maul. He's been killed. And I imagine Christopher Lee was around like sort of planning stuff around then anyway, so anyway. Yeah, I don't know, but not to be honest, not like it actually matters because nothing else is really well.
He was already a Count, but he fully upgraded to Sith and removed the O.
You do that generally when you become a Sith.
Yeah.
Just swap the letters around and.
Yes.
Considering it's like 2 and a bit hours long, it's very busy. A lot happens, but yeah, I agree with you, David. It's a lot of busy work just to get us to the bridge, essentially bridging the gap next week. Whoever said to you this film looks attractive, I must say the only attractive thing is probably Hayden Christensen's face, even though he only has one facial expression. he has a little bit of eye candy. But apart from that, it's
Even
also
he's doing
obviously
really creepy stalkerish.
no. It just looks cute.
Glances at Padme.
It's like Keanu Reeves. I don't know. You got to stop. He's just wooden, but
But
you can't stop
Keanu
looking at him.
Reeves is an outstanding physical actor.
Yes, but has a mono face.
I was going to say, if they give him no dialogue, then he's great.
Yeah, he's amazing. Just when he talks, I think probably this and Die Another Day were like the two worst films of 2002 of that year. They tried to pack a lot in, but it still really sags in places. CGI too obvious. Even Yoda, who's like first, he's entirely made out of CG this time around. Really obvious. Just looks cartoonish and very silly. Incredibly clunky dialogue. Romance scenes not romantic. Lighting is terrible as well. Lighting, obviously, technology has come a long way in the years since, but lighting just looks terrible in this film. Although I do remember going to see this at the cinema and then being amazed by the Dooku versus Yoda fight, and thinking, who knew Yoda could move like that? And just generally being gobsmacked. But now kind of thinking, actually, it's quite heavy-handed, and again, it's like last week, or no, sorry, the week. Where are we? Yeah, last week. It's a bit too much choreography. Yeah, generally a low point in the series.
I kind of went back and forth. I kind of watched it with a bit more of an open mind to trying to find positive things about it. All the obvious stuff is right. I mean, the first of all being he's painted himself in a corner completely with Phantom Menace, so that was already a massive step to having to rush everything in this film. Yeah, the dialogue is clunky. The love story is ridiculous. The direction is just non-existent. I think that's the thing, is that like with the original trilogy, and you see in a lot of films already. There's some films where they have terrible dialogue, but you can get through it with the actors if you've got a good enough director. And he obviously just wasn't interested in here. I think with all the CGI, he was obviously, again, this is obviously kind of like tech demo stuff for him, and kind of pushing the envelope a bit more. Having said that, I really enjoyed parts of it. I thought Ewan McGregor was really good. I really enjoyed his whole detective kind of storyline thing. And kind of like the stuff bringing about the war and all that kind of thing kind of seemed a bit more interesting, I guess, because there was no tax involved this time. It was just like space Brexit, really. And I honestly think a lot of it looks absolutely beautiful. Yes, it's got a digital sheen to it. Yes, it's very much dictated by what the technology was available at the time.
I think there's a couple of bits of this film, and I don't mean scenes, I mean a couple of settings, if you like, that are really nice.
Well, George did kind of some fan service for this one, with Jango Fett and Boba Fett and things like that. And I think tried to kind of make it more appealing in lieu of what happened with the reaction to the Phantom Menace. It's almost as if another part of them went, fuck it, I'm going to give them pure George Lucas. And while that certainly comes out in the dialogue and all that, and it's terrible, there's so much imagination in this film. And it reminds me of the kind of paintings you saw on science fiction novels from like the 60s and 70s. Just all completely crazy stuff. Half of it probably influenced by drugs. And
George Lucas and his fucking Benelin.
And yeah, so I really kind of got down with that aspect of it. So yeah, I kind of was able to enjoy it on kind of like in a different way than I did before. When I didn't like it before. So
yeah, I mean, certainly on the approach to Coruscant, and anything Coruscant in the sky I quite like. Anything Coruscant at ground level I don't, because it's basically Blade Runner. But anything from the sky, I was thinking, what am I seeing here, and what am I being responding to? Is is it steampunk? And I'm thinking, no, it's not quite steampunk. And I'm thinking some of these buildings are a bit Fleischer era Superman.
I think there's a point you made last week pretty heavily about the Phantom Menace being kind of like the last one that felt like Star Wars or looked like Star Wars.
Yeah.
And thinking about it now, I think that's intentional. And I think that perhaps that was
the reintroduction, maybe?
Yeah.
And
the phasing in from the original Star Wars and then opening it up to this.
So, in other words, The Phantom Menace is another film I can force a link to GoldenEye with. Cool. The Phantom Menace is like GoldenEye, he says.
Everything revolves around GoldenEye.
Yeah.
And also the bit when they jump out through the vent as well.
There are bits in this film that are a lot more attractive. Like I say, I've always focused on this film at its worst, and actually, that is most of the film. It's not very good, but certainly, I think the Jedi archives look lovely, very painterly, and I think actually that might be an artistic choice. I think even with the better CG we have now, you might actually retain that painterly quality.
I've got a fun fact about them coming up at the end of the show.
All right, absolutely cool. Chris?
Well, I think at this day, I remember going to see this at the cinema. Just finished college and going in. Well, I dragged my mum to go and see it. I think it was like I was late going to see it. I think it was like gonna stop the showings like a week or so afterwards, and I was like, also I was like really sort of excited for it because obviously I really enjoyed Phantom Menace. I was thinking, right, we're going to get this like really sort of cool Star Wars. I think everyone's kind of giddy about it as well because they've got 5 stars in Empire, and and I think a lot of that stuff is generally the excitement of seeing like lots of lightsaber fights and seeing the big battle at the end, Yoda commanding the stormtroopers and seeing Yoda fight, all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of people thought, like, oh my god, this is amazing. But I had a feeling while watching it, I got about half an hour into it, and I just remember thinking, why am I bored? I'm just really bored, and I kind of felt like that every single time I've watched this film. So I'll start by saying the good things. I mean, I'm kind of my opinion is basically what everyone else just said. Really, I did find things I actually liked this viewing, mostly in its design. I like the concept of how the world it builds. I think one of the things Lucas is really good at is that, and I also found some of the imagery, like if you could take certain stills of some of the shots, they look really great. Even just like a shot of like Anakin just sort of stood with his legs apart, like with hands behind his back. But no, there is a shot where he's like looking out from balcony. No one else there, just him.
Yeah.
It actually looks very striking.
With Vader's breathing over it.
Yeah.
And also there was a bit where I thought, actually, that's a really, really kind of prominent moment was the bit when they're going into the. It's not like it's like the Gladiator Stadium thing, where like
I don't like it
but
I do at least like the organic nature of it.
Yeah, I mean, forget all the how the love story is composed, because it's all just shit. But in terms of the image of them going into the arena, with them kind of like leaning into one another, is that's a very good shot. And I think so. Things like that was like, oh my god, that was like really striking. I was like, God, I was like thinking, oh, it's a shame that the script and the love story isn't earned and and all this crap, Otherwise, this would be great. I mean, I think in broad strokes, if we sat down with George Lucas before this came out and said, right, George, what's going to be in episode 2? And he said, well, this is going to happen, and then that and then this will lead to this, and ultimately I end up with a big battle in the Gladiator Stadium, and be like, my God, this sounds absolutely awesome. I cannot wait to see this. But the problem is everything else is just really, really crap. I think what the key moment for me was like half an hour in watching the speed chase, watching Anakin like sort of give chase with Obi-Wan to
I was bored stiff during that.
Well, that's just it. I kind of like looking at all the design stuff, thinking, oh wow, this looks really, really good. Like, sort of, look at all this world building, look at the production, look at the design, look at the ideas behind it. And I suddenly remembered, why aren't I fucking engaged with the story? I just found myself like, shit, the
characters don't inhabit. The actors don't inhabit their characters, and it isn't It isn't the actors' fault. By and large, it's people stood around just spewing lines at each other. And it's very difficult to engage with that.
And it's about any thought of anything. It's like, it's like you said. It's like, oh, he was a dear friend. They show none of this. None of this is thought out well through. Like the romance with Anakin and Padmé is paramount to anything. That's probably one of the most important things you nail in this film. You have to, instill like a true. Sorry to quote a film you don't like, Dave. But you have to instill like
you need Christian Slater in this film.
You need to instill like a strong, believable love story that's kind of like very sort of like sweet. It's not there. It's not earned. And also, I think I'll probably. We'll get into this more as we talk about the film, but I think Lucas kind of just forgot the tragic element of Anakin. Like, you remember the first Star Wars, and see Luke. He's very sort of. You think, how can this guy be like the spawn of like the evilest dude in the galaxy? And now Anakin's story is meant to sort of like parallel that, and. The whole time, he's like, how can he not turn into a massive fucking evil bastard? Like, it completely loses the tragedy of his fall. With this film should basically be like, yes, he's a bit hot-headed. Yes, he's kind of like, he doesn't really follow the rules, but deep down, he's a really good guy and a really good Jedi. And his heart's always in the right place, and we should believe and feel that. So when he falls, ultimately in the next week, and in the next episode, we should feel that a lot more. But here we're just like, Luke's just gone right now.
We should almost be begging towards the screen to be wrong, that there is going to be some last minute bait and switch, and it isn't quite as we knew it.
Yeah,
I think the other two things that just occurred to me. Watching it today, one I'm sort of articulating in my mind now, but one I thought of earlier is I think this is an obvious thing to say with so much CG in it, but I don't even think this would be a remotely ugly film if it had been made 10 years after it was. All of the problems with this, I mean, I hate everything Geonosis. That horrible red sky all looks like a cartoon. The clone troopers aren't rendered properly, and they throw a bit of dirt on them to try to make them look real, but they just look like dirtier sprites. I don't like any of that, but there's enough attractiveness in the design and enough nods to the things that Lucas is into as well. I mean, you think there's a 50s style diner in it. You think of something like American
Which
Graffiti.
got me thinking, how the hell is this existing? Like, where do they get the idea to do American design diner?
Well, it isn't, is it? It's
in
just
a galaxy far, far away.
It's like their
long time
language
ago.
is coincidentally identical to English, even though its written version isn't. The speeder cars look a little bit like 50s influenced. But the digital stuff in it looks horrible and very, very dated. And so it ruins the look of the film, and it could have been so much better. But on the Anakin thing, another thing that I often think about is the example of when you watch an Incredible Hulk film or the TV series, any incarnation of the Incredible Hulk, that it done properly, it gets you to root against what you really want, which is we want to see the Hulk, right? But done right, and whatever you think of the Ed Norton version of the film, which in some respects was a lot less interesting than the Ang Lee film. But that first sequence where he was sort of chased back into his factory and he changed in there, as a viewer, I was desperate for him not to change, even though we want to see the Hulk. And I thought the film had really succeeded in that way. And I think the same is true here. We want to see Vader, but done properly, we should be desperate for him not to become Vader. Where he's such a little asshole that I'm just like, oh, fucking get on with it.
It's like, we got to show like how this guy could become Vader. When it's like, we actually know you need to kind of like make it more tragic. We should yes give us reasons why, but we need to kind of like root for him not to be. even though we know the outcome.
And just a word on the acting of Hayden before we get scene to scene where he's really fucking bad. One of the worst things they did is like almost a mirror of what they did with Wonder Woman. That to kind of explain away Gal Gadot's, or Gal Gadot, I never know the pronunciation of that.
It's Gal Gadot, yeah.
It is Gal Gadot, isn't it? I've always called her Gal Gadot.
Yeah,
but she has an unusual way. It's the accent. It's where she's from.
Yeah.
But she has a non-Western way of delivering the English language because it's not a first language, and also just the cadence is completely different. So what they did was have everyone on her home island speak the same way. So it doesn't stand out. It's just the way Themyscira women speak. In this film, they've decided bizarrely to give Hayden the same cadence as James Earl Jones, and it doesn't work. It makes bad dialogue and poor acting look even worse, and it was one of the worst decisions for hamstringing this film. For all we talk about the digital effects and everything else, one of the worst things is Hayden trying to stretch out sentences to sound like James Earl Jones. It's a mistake.
I've never noticed that. I generally have never noticed that. I never thought of it. I'd always thought his performance was very stilted, and I never really blamed Hayden Christensen for how bad he is in this, because I just think
you can't blame him.
I just think
really.
With the direction and the script, and
if you are micromanaging his every delivery and every movement, it's going to come off bad.
Yeah,
and that's just it.
There's no way to play it really.
But the way to actors are there to do what the director wants.
exactly.
But but just to say, I think you're right with Ewan McGregor. He does carry this film.
He's easily the best thing in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like last week with Liam Neeson. He just carries the film, and I think he does it next week as well. Just a quick note on the last 30 minutes of the film. It struck me after this viewing that the final 30 minutes are absolutely pointless. Nothing actually happens that actually matters to the story at all. Dooku gets away. That's it. Oh, and Anakin gets his arm cut off, which has no impact on the rest of the story at all. So, actually, there's nothing. Everything else that happens is just fan service, kind of like, oh, we'll just give you like a spectacle.
It's very fan servicey. There are lots of foreshadowings and references and callbacks to previous Star Wars films.
Well, it is.
It's probably the most fan servicey of the lot.
It's all Palpatine's plot, though. That's the whole point of it. That it's in the background. While it's supposed to be, and Anakin.
He's like the puppet master, isn't he? Sort of pulling the strings in the background.
Palpatine is doing that, and this is how he was able to get the Empire up like that, because he was able to manipulate it all to get his clones. And his I love the Republic, I love democracy rubbish is just a front for him to be able to have emergency powers and get all his things. So, and that's kind of when they say at the end and he goes, victory, not victory. That's the whole thing. The war is happening and everything is going as he's planned.
It's all by his design, isn't it? Really.
I get that, but that's already happened. With the final 20 minutes, everything's already happened, going towards his plan. Nothing has even altered that, and more importantly, nothing's even happened for the main characters. You think back to Empire, when Luke fights Vader. I mean, yes, he gets his arm cut off, but his whole worldview is completely changed after that. After that revelation, that changed something. We as an audience learn something that actually changes, that affects the story. Whereas here, you don't get anything that really matters. I just found it actually quite redundant for the whole final act to not have anything in it.
Well, I think because it was already done earlier with his mum.
I guess so, but that's not the point I'm making. I mean, the point.
No, I understand it, but we can talk about kind of comparing it to the end of Empire, but he's obviously gone with a different kind of tone to that, and I don't.
I actually think I can see what he's trying to do, and I think had he been able to shoot action better, has CG been an awful lot more advanced, and had the general standard of acting and dialogue been in this film, the whole idea of finally seeing all the Jedi arrive and go at it in an arena isn't on paper a bad one. But there are a load of silly jokes in it, as usual. It does look like a load of blue screen and green screen, which it is. And the end result is not wildly impressive. And I lose touch with it so quickly because I just don't like the aesthetic. Everything Geonosis I don't like the look of. But I think it's a bit fluffed in execution, but I can at least see what they were trying to do.
Oh yeah.
And I think the idea of something needs to overcome Padmé's professionalism, because she's sort of giving into it, but she actually says to him, she eventually settles on no. And it's only when their lives are absolutely in danger that she says, well, the attitude then becomes, we could die any minute. I do love you.
Yeah.
In theory, that's not bad. It's just the execution's quite cringe-making in places.
That and the fact that they actually lack any chemistry, as we've mentioned before.
Yeah.
I don't think they were even allowed to. I don't think it was possible to make chemistry.
Yeah. Shall we discuss this shit? Film. Sequentially.
We can all do Commodian size together.
Look, we're going to try to be balanced about this, like we are about everything. Charlie's watched it with a bit more of a sort of positive slant. I've tried to, not entirely successfully, but not every scene is an ugly train wreck like maybe I might have thought in my head.
Yeah, I mean, even I appreciate like the visual aspects of this, definitely.
But they are affected by the technology of the time.
I think hopefully by now you can realise that we are talking about episode 2.
Oh shit, we haven't even done that bit, have we? Before we discuss this film sequentially, tell us who's in this.
We've pretty much gone through it, haven't we? I think we didn't really need to do it.
Alright, fair enough.
So directed by George Lucas, starring Hayden Christensen, Ewan McGregor, Natalie Portman.
Everybody.
And
also Rose Byrne and Joel Edgerton before they were very famous.
Rose Byrne is in it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very small cameo role.
For about a minute.
Christopher Lee.
Blink and you miss her.
And the one who played, I'd be, we all age, but if that was the Aunt Beru I married, I'd be really disappointed by episode 4.
She looks about 12. She's quite young.
19 years, and she goes from youngish, admittedly, but like really kind of pretty to
not very.
to not very.
Sorry, love.
What's in the court this
so
time, Charlie?
It's a lot of stuff about Count Dooku and separatists and things like that.
So the usual exciting, inclusive stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's all like Senate kind of stuff. And
Not text this time.
Oh, he
Blah,
does
blah,
talk
blah.
about she's travelling because Padmé is going to Coruscant to vote on giving the Chancellor emergency powers.
Yeah, so she's a senator now.
Which, this gets explained a bit later.
Stupid Queen bollocks. Because she says, they wanted me to elect. They wanted to elect me for Queen for life. It's like, you don't elect a Queen. What are you talking about?
Well, even if that was a language thing, and you say, well, they elect a head of state and they just call them a queen with all the pomps and circumstances, would anyone elect a 14-year-old? Would they appoint senators? And also, would Anakin and her have a really fucking stiffed expository conversation about it? I heard they said they tried to get you to stay on, but you did. You did. Well, I didn't want to be queen anymore, but I decided this. That's excellent.
That's exactly how it went.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that these first moments. First of all, it's a bit odd that it goes up. Pans up instead of down.
Yeah, that's a bit weird. I think that and Rogue One was the other film in which that happens.
Well, there was no crawl in Rogue One.
No, but again, it's just obvious because typically the camera goes down.
Yeah. But the kind of opening sequence with all the clouds or the fog, I think is quite beautiful. And
the film I thought of came after this, but I thought of Sky Captain and The World of Tomorrow.
That's a very pretty film.
It's got a fakery to it, which is, I'm pretty sure, the level of technology. But the craft, the design of the craft, the way the clouds are, and the bits of the buildings we see, which are kind of evoked a bit of Fleischer to me,
Absolutely.
I thought looked great. I have to say that and it was literally a tweet saying this is a beautiful film. Okay, well I've got my doubts, but let's watch that with an open mind. And sure enough, the opening scene's kind of attractive, and it's quite a moody shot of Coruscant as well.
Absolutely.
Very
It reminded me. Have you ever seen a film called Things to Come?
No.
It's from 1930s, based on H.G. Wells' novel, and kind of it reminded me of that, and kind of certainly the ship design as well, where it's very much again kind of harking back to an older generation.
You must check that out.
And it's great, but again, it's then as soon as they land, it's so rushed, and he gets out, and it's like, I was wrong. There was no danger at all.
I know. I failed you by being
dead,
killed, which is my job.
I thought that as well. I thought, how have you failed? You did exactly what you're supposed to do.
This film has no way of, because there's so much packed into it, because he fucked up last time by setting it 10 years previous. By
having a whole third of the prequels being in a throwaway chapter 10 years before, yeah.
Exactly. Then it feels like every scene in this film is just you can feel it rush through. Yeah. And there's no breathing in it. Again, this scene, everything's like goes really, really quickly in this opening scene.
But it isn't just that they're rushing, Charlie, because this bit is really rushed. I totally agree with you. But they rushed through this with no sense of foreboding in order to get to an over-elongated office chat. And it's like, well, if you split the time a bit more equitably, you could have had a really tense, beautiful scene there, and then cut to a little bit of exposition quickly.
Yeah. I think one thing I noticed today was that even the first person to speak, the guy, whoever he is, Amidala's guards or whatever, again, is someone
not
really...
Ukwashi.
No. It's really, really wooden again and badly directed. And it's like, Senator will make our final approach to Coruscant. And it's just like you're immediately setting the first line of this film.
That's where I have problems with this in expressing a view on Lucas, because on the one hand, I think his quality control is obviously really high, because even though some of the effects don't look great, there is an extra I once saw talking about Yoda's line, and he put the animator through hell trying to get that exactly as he wanted it. So there's no doubt he's very, very micromanagey, but at the same time, the line readings he's willing to accept annoy me, because I just go, oh, that's really lazy. But I don't think it's lazy at all. I think it's just what George sees. Yeah. Oh, well, that got across what he needed to get across good enough.
I get the impression, they did several readings, and he's gone for what to us might seem like the most boring ones, but to him, that was like, oh, that hits the mark, that's the tone I want to create, I'll have that one. But then obviously to us, it's like, we are approaching, in a monotone voice. Like, oh, what?
Yeah, I mean, he talks about these films being silent movies and whatever, and this one would be 1,000 times better if it was a silent movie.
Watch it on mute.
Well, not mute.
So when it gets to the romance scene, it's just Anakin making like an O with his thumb before, and then pushing his finger through it, giving a thumbs up. Okay, so this. So then we see digital Yoda and Jimmy Smits.
Hey, I like a bit of digital Yoda in this movie.
I thought Jimmy Smits was really good casting, actually.
He's actually cool in this.
Because they were going to have someone else in the Phantom Menace. They cast someone else, right. And then he didn't appear. They cut him out for whatever reason, and then luckily we're able to recast. And it's nice, A, because he's a person of color, and B, because he's a good, solid, reliable actor.
Well, he spent most of his career playing. When he was younger, he played lawyers and cops. And now he's getting older. He plays like senators and presidents.
Yeah,
it's quite appropriate casting. And also,
kind of quite statesman-like, doesn't he? As well.
Well, not only that, the actor's about 6'4".
He's very imposing.
But he's got quite a soft voice, not a high voice, a soft voice. So he's at once.
He doesn't go hello.
he's at once got a protective air to him, but he's also kind of comforting as well.
Yeah, so his idea.
You can imagine him as a foster parent. You can.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, definitely. He's perfect in the role, definitely.
I just buy him as like a politician, as a kind of like someone who would be in that that role. You can kind of like, someone who's like, he looks like he's in charge or something. Yeah, he looks kind of.
You
like,
trust him in that position.
I mean, not trust him, but just someone who looks like in charge or authoritative.
I think someone you can already see has principles.
Definitely.
He always has that look about him, and his body language as well. That he's quite a principled person.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been not that 3 or 4 years after this, he was the replacement. He basically succeeded President Bartlett in the West Wing. He becomes the next president. What did you think of Digital Yoda? I've never had a problem with this, but I think half the reason I've never had a problem with it is they put a bit more time to it than a lot of the other digital effects in the film, so he's better rendered than a lot of the other stuff in the film. But I think also the puppet in the theatrical release of Episode 1 was so bad.
It's kind of digitally. You can see more aspects to like his face and his features and to his clothes that you never noticed before. But because it is so CGI, so much so it's in your face. It does kind of make the calling me up Puppet Yoda stand out more for being slightly poor. I really struggled with CGI Yoda. I really, really did. Just looks very to the point of almost being cartoonish. Sort of reminded me a little bit of like animated series. I mean, I still I enjoyed the improved motion aspects of it, but just like the way he looks is very cartoonish. Struggle to take him seriously. I feel really bad saying that, but it was just too much CGI for my liking, sadly.
I think it's the dialogue for me. I think that's just I think I can get by it if the dialogue was like just felt more organic and had almost better written. It just feels like so lame and ill thought through, because every time he's like he's talking in that Yoda way, but it's really, really well ill thought out and repetitive at times. It's just like, oh, for God's sake, it's just it just clunks along and it doesn't suit Yoda that well.
My recollection is he is vastly improved next week.
Yeah, I thought it looked great, and again, it's with certainly the limitations of that technology. I didn't think he kind of stood out particularly because of the kind of very kind of heightened sensibility of the look of the film anyway. And
he's better than most of the other digital stuff in this film. He is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, he would be. Where are you going to put your man hours?
Yeah, I thought it was good because he could actually provide emotion. I saw emotion in his face, and I felt that, and so that for me was.
I've never had the same problems with it, but there's no doubt. There's a couple of scenes in Episode 3, particularly where you go, "Oh, that's a vast improvement." The way they've been able to light him there.
Absolutely.
So, but this is fine. I didn't have a massive problem with it. My only problems are the problems of consistency. But I think if you stuck a puppet in the middle of all this CG, it would look really weird.
Yeah, seeing as everything else is CGI anyway.
That's what I mean. It would look really odd to just have a relatively expressionless, as good a job as Frank Oz did. You can't animate the eyes when it's a puppet in the same way.
He would literally turn into Jim Henson Star Wars and be.
I know. Crackle rock. I don't want to knock the puppet. I love the puppet, but it would look a bit odd here. But a lot of I was happy for the change only because them continuing would have meant using the puppet from last time. And the Episode 1 puppet is awful.
Yes.
It doesn't even look like Yoda. It looks like a homemade equivalent.
Yeah.
Somebody's had a go at recreating Yoda, and they've thrown a lot of money, time, and effort to it, but it isn't the real thing. But yeah, the whole point of this scene is the Chancellor's still in power after 10 years. Now, Americans, and this is an American film, are big on their term limits. So it's already, what's he still doing there? and they put Padmé, because she's just survived in an assassination attempt. She's put under the two Jedi, not literally under the two Jedi. That would be wrong, but she's been.
I'm sure Anakin would like that.
Well, yeah. Yeah. This film is full of absolutely batshit dumb decision making, but at this point, with Obi-Wan there as well, that kind of makes sense. She's put under a couple of Jedi protectors.
Yeah, I thought it was. I mean, I thought the politics were kind of fairly more interesting in this one, and also the kind of you see the Jedi being a lot more arrogant. I mean, they talk about Anakin being arrogant, but when you've got Mace Windu and what's his name, Ki-Adi-Mundi at the beginning talking about Count Dooku, saying he was a Jedi, he can't assassinate anyone, it's not in his character.
Yeah,
you just
and
think,
you can see
what a load of rubbish.
I read that on the fact that they just don't know. I mean, I like what Dooku's turn? No, come on, that hasn't happened. You know, in that kind of like, well, come on, I know Dooku. That's not possible.
There is an awful lot about the Jedi in this film that isn't well thought through at all.
Well, yeah, they just come across as really dumb, really, and really kind of like.
As we get into it, the implications of the lifestyle and the way they live and act are dodgy. We'll get to it.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the kind of the next couple of scenes. I think because Becca, I mean, when Becca said about the lighting, I disagree quite heavily, especially in these kind of scenes, because it's all kind of.
Oh, I think the Coruscant lighting is quite painterly.
Because you get through the whole horrible scene with Jar Jar, and then Anakin.
Yeah, Coruscant looks lovely, absolutely lovely. It's very atmospheric. And also in this film there is quite a lot of atmosphere, but I just mean kind of later on when you get to like the example, the arena scene. And also during the speeder chase as well.
I think you're talking about poor CG, really.
That's generally what I mean. Otherwise, it's quite, it's quite. As I say, I take back my comments a bit earlier about being unattractive.
There's a
lot of taken back. I think a lot of this film is fairly unattractive, but
I'm just saying it's not completely ugly. But there is a lot of art and a lot of, as I say, like painterly scenes. I do like, for example, the I was gonna say the love scenes. I can't think what's called it. The lake house, for example, was obviously Lake Como, Italian lakes. Obviously, I think of Casino Royale. It's very, very beautiful, and I do love some of the matte paintings used throughout this entire series. So gorgeous, but just for me, the CGI is so much in your face, and it does, for me personally, detract from the beautiful look of this film. I really
agree
in general, but it's just one particular scene that I have problems with.
Yeah, but there's a higher number of attractive scenes than we thought there were. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, what I was kind of getting at is,
yeah, sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry, no, that's all right. So you have the scene where Anakin and Obi-Wan are chatting, and it's kind of low level light, and then it kind of flips between that and Padmé's bedroom, which is kind of illuminated by R2 and his scanner, but also just kind of like the vague light from outside, which I thought was really nice low level light, and I really liked the way as well. It kind of the dialogue continued while looking at her in her bedroom. So, and it had all the stuff about Anakin kind of going on about Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan was going on about not the politics, not again, etc., etc. And that kind of reminded me a bit of when he talks about Anakin following him on some damn full idealistic crusade, which is certainly not followed up on really.
But it's just that the dialogue must look written down. I mean, it's where he says, "I have observed." It starts in a sentence with that. We're going to get more of that later. I mean, it's pretty bad. And the other thing is, the other thing is, we start running into just these bizarre bits of logic. So one of the best bounty hunters around hires another bounty hunter, and that bounty hunter cuts a hole in a window in order to put in some poisonous things. And you think, just fucking shoot her?
Like, is she a bounty hunter or is she an assassin?
She's well. Does it matter?
Well, no, you're right. I mean, yeah, but
also it makes a really, really, really stupid mistake which is the same thing a lot of people make, which is particularly kind of bugging me because I collect spiders. Is that there's a bit, again, stupid bit was, take these, they're very poisonous, which is a terrible scene in itself. But also, it should be venomous, not poisonous, because if something bites you and it injects venom into you, that means they're venomous. But if you eat something and get sick from that, that means that it's poisonous.
Thank you. No, it's very important. I think there's just maybe
It really pisses me off, especially when someone gets a wound from somewhere, sees a spider somewhere, gets infected and said, "Oh, this false widow bit me," and there's the big headline newspapers on the Scum and all this shit saying, "Oh, poisonous spider kit."
It's like, no, you're technically right, it's venomous.
Yeah, actually, it's venomous, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
I agree, Charlie, I agree. Yeah, it's a bit of inconsiderate on behalf of the screenwriters there. Get it right, get your facts right.
Yes.
Yeah, but there's no quality control in any of this. It's all written by one guy anyway.
Well, yeah.
There's no process here. There's no studio to go through it and stuff. It's just, there you go. I wanted to say
They
that.
thought, people won't know what the difference is between venomous and poisonous.
But none of this makes
Charlie,
any sense at all. You put in these two poisonous things that look awful as a CG effect to slowly edge over towards her to kill her when you could have just fucking shot her quite easily, presumably. And then Obi-Wan goes diving out the window, which I just didn't get at all. And it launches into this long action sequence that just goes on forever. And I just remember being sat in the cinema watching this and thinking, I should be enjoying this, but it's really, really boring.
Yeah, that's just my feeling as well. Is like you think, you look at it on paper, you think like, this is kind of like really cool. It's like, I mean, it is the one that looks kind of like Blade Runner. You kind of got like the private eye kind of blinds, sort of like creeping through with the putting in, like cutting out open the window and the slugs, and think, wow, and you go, okay, this looks like kind of really cool. You know, straight to like a chase scene, Obi-Wan jumping through the window, hanging on this glider thing, whatever, and it's like sort of really fast paced. Think, this should be amazing. And it just isn't. It just feels such a drag to watch. It seems to go on forever as well.
Yeah, I like it when he jumps through the window. I think that's really fun.
Yeah,
and it kind of makes me think that's what the film should have more of, just kind of crazy stuff like that. But then, and
perhaps that's why it stands out to us, Charlie, because it is so.
Yeah, in theory, that's the thing with a lot of these things is, in theory, it should be really good, and like him doing that, and then Anakin chasing after him, and that kind of thing. But it's just, the editing particularly is sluggish, very sluggish, and it just, it all feels very artificial. And
again, the commentary was full of, and that's a digital Anakin, and that's a digital this, and it's like, well, their reflexes are such that they're never in any danger. They can dive out of anything and they'll land safely. There's no danger with any of this, and then when they land in what's meant to be like a cantina type sequence, firstly, the shapeshifter in a natural format is a terrible digital effect, but also it looks really Blade Runner, which doesn't feel very Star Wars to me, and I just don't like any of this very much.
I think that the key for what I think is like, this is going to be showcasing Anakin and Obi-Wan, because for the majority of the film they're separated, so you ideally you want to get that core sense of teamwork, like master and apprentice, and friendship as well. Do you think that'll be like the key thing? But half the time they're bickering. I mean, like it's like what you said in that poor line delivery. Like, you know, like literally, Obi-Wan, Ewan McGregor's got his arms crossed, like acting like he's like the nagging wife to husband who's got them lost. It's like, well, I told you to turn that way. You know, it's like, well, you got it. You know, it's just like, fuck's sake.
The camaraderie between them is there really,
and I think George Lucas thinking like, yeah, this is really funny. This, and, you know, and I'm like thinking, no, this is fucking awful.
It's like last week that there was like chemistry between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan last week. You did kind of feel they were master and apprentice. So there was that sense of dread there when Qui-Gon, was killed. But like here, you don't get that at all. I mean, obviously the two go their separate ways, as we know.
But
yeah, but you don't. you don't really get that. Like when Anakin whines later on about how like he's, he thinks he's so much more powerful, he thinks he's ready for these tests that he has to take, and how everyone doesn't think he's ready. It's like that doesn't really come through just because he just spends a lot of time whining, and I don't really feel there's that sense of chemistry, like a friendship or even kind of master apprentice relationship between them at all. I'm sorry, but no. Maybe I watched it wrong. I don't know.
Can you watch it wrong? Were you looking at the TV set?
I was looking the other way.
You aren't like early Only Fools and Horses trying to get Dukes of Hazzard on the microwave.
On the microwave. Do it on the radio.
Well, the thing is, they just have such a negative relationship, and it adds to the thing that I was saying before. Like, this is meant to be a tragedy, and you're not building up as a tragedy. It's already inevitable now. It's all right, okay.
You're already a bit like, oh, get this dysfunctional load of bollocks over and done with.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
You get no impression that either of them really enjoy the life either. Really, some of the more extreme stunts during the chase he seemed to kind of enjoy, but it just seems like a massive burden on Anakin. He's not enjoying it.
No, I mean,
I think there's a thread. Sorry to cut you off. I'd have thought there's a bit of a thread running through this about how the Jedi, obviously, they were meant to keep the peace and keep order, and how the Jedis are kind of slowly on the downfall. That might have something to do with it. I don't know. Obviously, because they don't realise Dooku, and the whole thing about Dooku. Don't know the legend that is Christopher Lee. It could just be that generally the Jedis are on the slide at this stage in the narrative. Well, that maybe has something to do with it.
The Jedi in all three of them are wank. Just the whole idea of it, the whole concept of it.
Oh, I'm glad I'm not the only one.
It's so fucking dogmatic and so organised. And the fact that all the Jedi are just hanging around on this one planet around the Jedi Council all the time.
They didn't do a lot. They
it makes no sense. It's just too organised.
I actually find this fundamentally quite worrying, the way the Jedi are presented in this, because we see them being trained as very, very young children. And you think, okay, well, a Force-sensitive baby or child of whatever age, bearing in mind Anakin was considered getting on the old side, are effectively taken into this life, trained by Yoda for a certain time, then apprenticed to somebody, and it's basically a loveless, emotionless, attachmentless existence. Yeah, and they've basically been born into it. So effectively, firstly, there seems to be an element of a lack of choice there. But also on top of that, having made that decision, they then are out to be diplomats. Well, if you wanted someone to complete any kind of diplomacy, part of diplomacy is understanding the points of view of the people you're looking for a diplomatic solution with, which means life experience. And if they're not allowed to fall in love, form attachments with anyone, live in any respect a normal life,
how are they going to know that?
They're going to be shite diplomats.
It's the fact that they're just monks, and there's the point that Padmé makes when Anakin and her go off on that ship. And it's just like about the Jedi not being able to do the things you want, or
imagine it'd be quite a celibate lifestyle as well. I imagine.
Yes, it's just sort of like, well, yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point. Is that
as you say, they're living like monks basically.
Remove emotion and. I mean, I get the idea. They're kind of like peacekeepers, so they're meant to be kind of like impartial, kind of.
But they're not really.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're not portrayed that way. I know.
You've got Samuel L. Jackson at the beginning saying we're keepers of the peace, not soldiers. And then
he's really wasted in this role. I mean, it's great that he joins the franchise, but it's just so wasted.
And then you've got him.
He spends most of the film stroking his chin. Sorry, Joe.
Big fucking general. Fighting everyone and leading an army of Jedi along with an army of clones.
Contradict yourself.
Where did this change? And the whole thing really, and again, this is down to the whole thing of attachment and all this thing and letting go. and this kind of thing, where you see Anakin's point, certainly next week as well, you see Anakin's point of view a lot more because of what the Jedi are like in this. And when you look in the original trilogy, and the whole point of that Down to Return of the Jedi is that Luke never let go of his father, never let his love for his father and his wish for his father to be redeemed, and his
not
hope
more
for his
than
father.
not, and then let's fuck off and do something else.
Yeah, he never let that get in the way.
Yeah,
Even when Obi-Wan was there saying it's a lost cause.
I mean, fundamentally, I remember there was something. I don't think it's in the extras as such, but I've read it in interviews and stuff. Most likely, it would have been an interview with somebody like Rick McCallum. It was quite funny in his way, and they were talking about the attachment things. And someone said, "What? No sex or celibate or something like that?" And he went, "Oh no, George is quite clear. They can have sex." And I'm thinking, well, there's a code to live by. You can casually fuck people as long as you don't care. Think it through, George.
Makes sense. You know, you can do one or the other. You can't do both.
But I mean, it's fundamentally almost it's child cruelty. They're being forced into a lifestyle under which they have no choice, and there's no levity. George's idea of levity is like last week, Jar Jar stepping in shit. This week, it's the running joke of people losing their lightsabers. That's George's like, isn't that funny? But in terms of the normal levity of everyday conversations, apart from the awkward chuckle in the lift, they're also damn fucking serious with each other all the time.
Isn't it? And
There's nothing about the Jedi lifestyle, apart from the robes being fairly cool and the lightsabers being cool. There's nothing about the lifestyle that would appeal.
I must admit, I do like the aspect of him constantly losing his lightsaber, only in the fact that because it implies that he's young and a bit kind of haphazard. It's just a thing, but the way it's handled with the dialogue
but
and
George
everything
thinks
else,
that's hilarious. On the commentary, he's going, and then they all start losing their lightsabers, and then you hear him go. Like, George thinks that's top comedy.
It's not, George. It's not.
I mean, you could say in terms of like how the Jedi, how they influence, maybe even Anakin's decision to turn to the dark side, to say, well, if you guys just are gonna be a bunch of dicks, I might as well just fuck off and join the dark side. It might be a valid point, and Lucas probably thought of that. I mean, you could hold the candle to religions themselves anyway. When they hold themselves to these kind of things, they do sort of fall victim to be hypocrites.
Well, I mean, it's actually in the event poor writing, but it's it's actually quite a logical outcome of a life of no attachments that you end up with no empathy, because next week you've got Anakin clearly terrified about potentially losing his wife, trying to talk to Yoda, and Yoda going, miss them not, mourn them not, and you think, well, you know, the Jedi deserve everything they fucking get here.
Yeah, it is kind of, it's more in a case of like, they're just written to make completely stupid decisions, completely just avoid of anything.
But that's the problem. They all have to be dickheads to make the plot work. In fact, we're getting to that because this shapeshifter dies, so they now want to get Padmé off planet. She wants to go back home, and they assign the fucking horny teenager to it.
Yeah, talk about being non-biased. Think like they have like how many, God knows how many Jedi, like actual not like a non-apprentice as well. You can just say, "Oh, we'll sign them to protect you." Firstly,
either get a Jedi Knight or get somebody either female or of a different sexual orientation. Yeah. Don't send a horny teenager who's been going on about dreaming about this woman.
Oh yeah, but he's really wanting to have like his own mission to complete his training.
Well, to finish himself off. Anyway.
Yeah.
Was there much of it with Palpatine's influence there at all?
I thought that was more next week.
I know there's and
next week he's continually saying things like, "Oh, I'd question their wisdom if they didn't assign you to this task."
He did influence the Jedi to assign Obi-Wan, meaning Anakin would be there to protect Padmé initially. I'm not sure about them splitting up, but
Hey, in terms of seeing every possible outcome, are we sure he's not like Blofeld Inspector?
Not
Never know.
He probably engineered a game of cards and everything.
Are you saying he might be the evil emperor at the end of this?
Nah, come on, that's a bit obvious.
You don't say. I must say, like, I do like him with them as makeup in this. So he's starting to look a little bit more like pale and decrepit. So you can kind of slowly see he's sliding
staging.
towards.
I think his.
What? Yeah.
Towards
So it's just,
yeah.
yeah, no, I think his story is probably the most interesting in the trilogy, really.
No, definitely is. You can see how he's doing all the machinations and pulling the strings behind the scenes there. But I've also got a fun fact about him. Well, about Palpatine later on in the show.
Okay.
Well, it's not really fun, but it's a fact, as you'll see.
Yeah. So, yeah, not only do they send the horny teenager to guard the hot young queen or senator, but they also go back to Naboo, which happens to be Lake Como, one of the most romantic places on Earth.
It looks beautiful. Shame the dialogue isn't. Like, I was so bored, I was immediately transported. Oh, Casino Royale.
And at the same time, Obi-Wan goes to see, goes to the 50s diner, doesn't he? To find out where that dart that killed Zam came from.
That's quite a cool scene. I do like that diner. It is like like the 50s kind of like capsule. It's in some big giant metal trailer. Which is very cool. I think.
Well, as tough as I am on this film, this is one of the scenes that gets ridiculed, as does whatever the character's called. I've completely blanked on his name. Dexter, that's it. Dexter. But I never really had a problem with this scene.
Not to be confused with Dexter Fletcher.
The only bit is the CG's not ready for physical. When they hug each other, that looks awful.
Yeah.
It's like the meeting between Solo and Jabba, really, isn't it? When he kind of walks up and steps on his tail.
I guess the one thing that I really come away from this scene which is I guess a good thing really, is wondering what their relationship came from.
Do you know? I think of him a bit like you get it parodied in the Police Squad TV series.
Oh, what the informer kind of
the guy who cleans the shoes.
Yeah,
that's what Dexter is. Watch Police Squad, listeners, if you haven't seen it. It was basically the TV series about 6 years before The Naked Gun. Got cancelled after about 6 episodes. Good, but it's really, really funny.
It's basically Extra Naked Gun, really.
Yeah, it is, pretty much. And it's a similar sort of stand. Yeah, it's a different guy playing Nordberg, a white guy. Yeah. But, yeah, it's really funny.
I guess it was the hug. But then the Jedi librarian. The most arrogant person in the history of the world. It's
just everywhere you go, right? Anytime anyone talks to a Jedi or anyone attached to the Jedi, they're cold, distant, and not overly friendly. Who'd want to be part of this lifestyle? Well, he's told to go looking for a planet, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he finds in the Jedi archives the planet's not there.
Yeah, it was erased from the archived memory. Don't they have passwords? Don't they have tracking software?
It's like literally someone tore the pages out of a book.
Yeah. And so he goes in to see Yoda. Now, the thing is, right, if I wanted to chat to Yoda about this quite scary plot, I'm not sure I'd do it in front of a group of 4-year-olds. Particularly as those 4-year-olds then fucking completely show me up.
Inappropriate.
It's quite a beautiful scene, though, where it's all surrounding them, the starfield.
Yeah, it's quite nice, yeah.
You mean younglings?
Younglings. I don't mind that, though. I like it's got its own terminology for certain things.
No, it's quite interesting. I think it kind of adds more weight to the whole thing.
Yeah, I've really never had a problem with them being called younglings.
It is a bit strange, but that's what they're called, so...
So, the planet is there, it's been hidden, because, as the child points out, while they're doing the stiffest lightsaber practice in the world, the kids are basically moving the lightsaber like 2 inches to the left, then 2 inches to the right, then 2 inches to the left, then 2 inches to the right.
I like that they're not all human. That's quite good.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I like the idea. I like the idea that if this is the world, Yoda gets the young kids for a little while. They do some of the basic stuff that we saw Luke doing when he was years older. But yeah, so it turns out that's Kamino, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yes.
Now Kamino we've cross-cut between Camino and Naboo. So we
Yeah.
do a bit of both. Firstly, Camino was an effect that I actually thought looked quite impressive at the time. Now it just now I just feel sorry for Ewan McGregor because he was
He's getting
surrounded by
soaked
nothing.
all the time.
Well, not only that, he's just surrounded by nothing the whole time he's there.
And it makes him look less like Jesus.
Jesus didn't get caught in many downpours.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things where you wish the CGI was a bit more up to it.
Yes.
Yeah, because I love the idea of it, and
I like the idea of it, and if a real attempt to go at creatures that couldn't be somebody in a suit just by the shape of them.
Yeah,
they've got
quite
a real
interesting, aren't
air
they?
of
It's like mixture of
peace
like the
about
sort
them.
of grey aliens.
Yeah,
but I mean, there were a few things about this scene. Firstly, I've heard it mentioned on other podcasts that Sifo Dyas was actually a misprint that George now has to live with because it was meant to be Sido Diaz, so it was meant to be Sidious.
yeah.
But no, so they've made some shit up because George never admits to making a mistake. Secondly, we see Boba Fett here, and I got a real problem with it because it's a moppet little fucking kid again, which really bothers me.
Oh, but he's so cute.
He's fucking not. There's nothing cute about this miserable little sod because the
He does learn
problem
a
is,
trick or two though to.
but
to,
George Lucas just accepts any take a child gives him because he opens the door. Is your father here? Yep. Can we come in? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I just think that you've just accepted that. That's just lazy. I know he's a kid. I'm not going to blame the kid. The worst line is next week. But it's just, it makes a film that all these people have put so many hours and so much work and so much money to and so much invention to, ends up making it look lazy. Because you think, well, if you accept that, you don't fucking care, do you?
So what difference would it make if this actually was Boba Fett anyway?
What, you mean Boba Fett maybe was a creature that aged a bit slower and this was Boba Fett?
Well, you wouldn't know anyway because he's always wearing a helmet. Especially in the original trilogy, but here...
All right, but he's still at his peak like 20 plus years earlier.
Yeah, just like a young guy, like...
I wouldn't have given a shit either way. Because I've never wanked off about Boba Fett anyway.
Yeah.
I don't really get the appeal, to be honest with you. That's not to say there shouldn't be an appeal or people can't like him. That's great. But I've never seen it. And so this whole idea of look where he came from is just the sort of shit I don't want anyway. I think that was kind of a late decision. But yeah. The idea of the clones, the speeding up was to make sure that they could have got there within 10 years. But I don't care about any of this, do you? Does anyone care about any of this?
Nope.
I like the kind of concept of it, and I like the way it looks. The kind of
I like the idea of Camino as a planet and the creatures.
Oh yeah, but the kind of the way the kind of all the test tubes and stuff, that's quite creepy, interestingly creepy. I quite like.
What's interesting about it is the fact that there's nothing at all creepy about the creatures, but what they're doing is creepy.
Yeah. I think the scene with him and Jango Fett, again let down by stilted dialogue by Timur Morrison, who is otherwise a decent actor. But I quite like just the kind of vague dialogue that they're both given, especially since they both know why they're talking to each other, and also kind of Obi-Wan shifting eyes towards his conveniently left open cupboard.
Yes,
with the
which is
with
left
the
slightly
armor.
ambiguous, but his head is definitely still facing that way when Django gets out the way.
Yeah, and
But,
then it's back to Naboo, and it's
I was
back
actually
sand.
wondering how they're getting on with the sand. I'm not a fan myself.
You think he'd be used to it though, wouldn't you?
And Natalie
on
Portman's changing her outfit every scene again.
The other thing is she
does wear
doesn't
some
want to be
amazing
current,
clothes in
so
this
she wears
film.
something vaguely see-through and a bit sexy.
Yeah, when he starts stroking her back.
I know. And then they have a bit of a snog, and then she's not happy. And then she thinks, right, I've got to damp this down.
Shouldn't have done that.
So she thinks, I've got to tamp down his enthusiasm, so I'm going to wear something vaguely S&M to dinner.
Yeah, well, they go for a picnic.
Oh,
While he sort of goes on he hops on for a ride of some random creature for no reason.
That looks awful. That looks awful. If you can't do it, just don't do it.
See, he cuts straight to that. It goes from one scene and straight to that, and you think, why? Why are you doing this? Just so he can be like.
And it's just like I shouldn't have done that. Should we go for a romantic picnic by the water? And then she's going like, well, no, I still don't want to encourage him, so I'm going to put on something S&M. Just like,
you know what? The scene that gets me, and the scene that goes like, that just blows my mind, and how George thought it was okay or acceptable, was the fact that when they had that sort of moment where he says, I'm all grown up. You said Joe said so yourself, and she sort of like she says, don't look at me like that. It makes me uncomfortable. And then she walks away, and he gives her the most creepiest look in the world. It's the most malevolent, sort of sinister kind of like.
And George Lucas is a student of film. You know what I mean? Even if you took all common sense out of it, you'd think, okay, George, what's that shot there for? Because it's a change of camera as well. They had to set that up. It wasn't just the camera panned round, it's a cut to him stood like that. So what was his direction? Okay, Hayden, can you look like you want to fucking rape her?
That's basically what it looks like. You know?
I know.
And I think George in his head thinking like, he's thinking, she is interested in me.
Yeah, no, whereas actually it just looks like he's either going to rape her or have a bit of a danger wank later. It's dodgy.
Yeah.
But yeah, the scenes on the planet, she goes from dressing sexily and warning him off to dressing sexily and having a picnic and warning him off to having a romantic dinner and warning him off to having a nice sit by the fire and having romantic conversation, then warning him off. This is fucking mental.
And throughout the entire parts of this, there was no actual reason you were given why Padmé would actually fall for him. Would go like, this is the guy he's my soulmate.
In reality, when they're having that exciting dinner of a single pair, we'll come back to that, Chris, because I'm sure you'll have some thoughts. Right? So, after they're having that exciting dinner of a single pair, and he says, Obi-Wan would be very grumpy if I saw you.
Very grumpy.
He's grumpy. How fucking old are you bellend?
Sorry.
Now, what I would do if someone said to words, saucy words like grumpy to me, I'd immediately go and change into something that shows a bit of flesh. So yeah, that stupid effect with the pear as well. The pear looks awful, and they didn't quite animate it right. She doesn't quite bite it right either.
No, so it does look a bit plastic.
Do we cut to the scene by the fire next? Which has the worst dialogue in the film.
Is this bit where Anakin trips up and his hand goes in the fire, and it
turns out he's Superman, yeah. And then they go and eat some flowers at the Fortress of Solitude.
You're in my very soul.
No, You're in my very soul. I am haunted by the kiss you should never have given me.
That just like a bad Google Translate.
But the worst bit is where he goes, I wish I could wish my feelings away. That's like, hang on, really?
I think we knew what he's trying to say, but he just can't express it properly.
And then she says, because this is how I get let down by a woman, she always says to me, if you follow your thoughts through to conclusion.
Right.
In reality, she should have just said like, Anakin, you're such a good friend. That's basically what she said.
Follow your thoughts through to conclusion, Anakin. You will end up coming on my breasts. This is really shit. But they're wildly in love at this point, and he's like, I'm haunted, and please tell me.
It's just a bit creepy, because ever since like the idea that they haven't seen each other since episode 1 as well.
I know. And he's basically been jerking off about her ever since he was able to. And then we get the do we get the wanking over his mother's next, Charlie? Scene you keep referring to.
Yeah. They've actually changed it now. I was quite surprised. They've added sounds of her being in distress and calling his name.
Yes.
To obviously play down the fact that it looks like he's having a wank.
Yeah, because you can't see his hand. His chest is heaving. He's a little bit out of breath and sweaty.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's kind
How old is he at this point, anyway?
19.
He's 19.
Yeah, well, it's 10 years on from the last film, so he's about 19.
Yeah. It's kind of, again, lack of care from George. It's like, oh, this hasn't got any CGI in, so I'm not going to worry about this.
Well, he got the point across. He's having a nightmare.
Yes.
Yeah. Except to dirty folk like Charlie Brigden, who thought he was having a wank.
And then that goes to the scene Chris was talking about, where he's standing on the balcony.
Heroically.
Yeah.
Trying to look heroic.
It's my mother.
Whoa! Unaccustomed as I am to speaking in public. Sorry.
Is that a Blackadder reference? Where...
Yes.
Yeah.
And he needs to head back to Tatooine.
Yeah.
Which is another section of the film I actually think looks quite nice.
Yes.
I noticed that today. There's a bit more colour in Tatooine. I mean, I certainly think when they remaster this and give it a bit of an HDR remaster, Tatooine will look really nice.
Yeah.
The night bit where he's on his speeder bike doesn't look as good. That looks a bit fakey in video game, but certainly they arrive in beautiful sunshine, and it actually looks quite nice.
Yeah. I mean, I really like the shot with the Jawas, with the two sandcrawlers, and he's by there, and it's based on some old Ralph McQuarrie pictures.
Oh yeah,
well.
sorry, yeah, where he's
Paintings,
asking around,
yeah, which is quite a beautiful shot. But yeah, I mean, and he goes.
In theory, the two male leads of the film are each undergoing their own investigation, but it doesn't actually kind of parallel as well as it should.
Yeah. And he meets his stepdad.
Klieg-Lars.
Yeah. It's almost like they were recasting Uncle Owen for the.
Do you know what?
Definitely
there's a resemblance.
Yeah.
You can see the resemblance there, definitely.
Casting's really good.
I always like George, though. I always think he's one of those actors who always gets overlooked, like all the time.
I don't think I saw him again until the Thing remake.
No, this is one of those roles. Obviously, been active on Australian TV and in films and everything. But this is like before he was famous over here.
It's a shame that they didn't follow it out logically and actually make him Anakin's brother, and then maybe have some more interaction between.
And the aging's a problem as well, because I think this is about 3 years before next week, and that's about 19 years before the original trilogy. So he's only like those two are 22 years younger than the people we saw in the first film, who looked about 60. So, but there you go. You just let it go, I suppose. It's nice to be back on the homestead. Yeah,
it'd be nice if they put him in the Obi-Wan film.
Yeah, it would be
if he comes back
again, because there's like a 19-year period. If they made the Obi-Wan film in 2 or 3 years' time, you could cast all the same people, and it's 5 or 6 years before the original trilogy. Yeah, certainly. But in fact, you could even go a bit earlier, because they aged up Obi-Wan for the Episode 3 anyway.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a nice little scene where they go back. And it's a shame because, well, I say a shame, but the kind of the speech he gives about what happened when she was taken and stuff. I remember it was like the second trailer, and it had that dialogue as almost like narration over scenes of stuff on Tatooine and things,
right? And
him looking for his mum.
Yeah,
and it felt really effective, almost like a kind of a war story kind of narration.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I've seen all that, but I don't remember that trailer at all.
Yeah,
it sounds interesting.
I just went and rewatched them all today.
Yeah,
I mean, he's not bad when you look at the general level of acting in this film.
Well, it's the point.
Directing.
It's very like the sort of dinner scene from the last film. It's just, getting across what he needs to know. Unfortunately, at this stage, be it direction, the actor, or the script, or a bit of all three, Hayden's just not got the range. He just looks fucking permanently a bit moody. and he goes off to try to find her. The Sand People got her, so he goes to find her.
And he finds her. And
she's been clearly mistreated. I mean, considering the age this film is aimed at, this would be quite tough for young children.
Yeah. Think this is why it's a PG this time around? Because all the others have been a U. Even like...
I don't know.
Because it was actually... I don't know if it was cut in the cinema, but I think it was originally cut maybe for home video release. Mainly, they cut out the scene where Jango Fett headbutts Obi-Wan.
Yes, yeah, that's we can see examples of that right the way back to something like License to Kill. The British Board of Film Classification, as opposed to the MPAA, had a real problem for years with headbutts. It would disproportionately affect.
It was like that in GoldenEye. Sorry to bring it up.
Yeah, hence GoldenEye. The headbutt was cut out.
It disproportionately changed the ratings more than it should. I don't know why headbutts. I mean, headbutts are not a great thing to encourage kids to do. By any stretch of the imagination, but the amount of damage they can cause. But I understand the thinking.
It's interesting.
But why particularly headbutts over a lot of other types of violence?
Here we see like beheading, arms coming off.
Yeah, but you're unlikely to behead your schoolmate.
I guess because of the level of damage you can potentially do.
Yeah, I think headbutts are quite dangerous.
Like breaking someone's nose and what.
And yourself as well.
Brain
your
damage.
own head as well, especially in
and stuff that you can do in the playground.
Yeah, you're unlikely.
You don't really want to encourage kids to headbutt. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting this kind of period of time because you had this and you had Spider-Man come out at the same time, and there was massive debates over Spider-Man because of
the sexual imagery.
No, the fight between him and Willem Dafoe.
Okay.
And just how much blood was in it, and how much he could have the shit kicked out of him. Because I can't remember if Spider-Man was a 12 or if it was a PG.
It was a 12.
It was a 12. I think it got changed to a 12A, didn't it?
Yeah, it got re-released later in the summer as a 12A because kids weren't able to see it. And it was counter-programming to the World Cup and stuff as well. So later in the World Cup period, they put it out again as a 12A.
Yeah, but so he finds his mum, and again, she's never been a bad actress in these films.
Definitely not. She's very good. And
the way she kind of see that he's all grown up. And it kind of adds a bit of a level of pathos that the rest of the film can't match. And then she dies, and then he...
and then he goes crazy, ate bonkers with his drill and sex.
Then he just offs some Sand People, Tusken Raiders.
And then you see Yoda noticing it happening. You hear Liam Neeson's voice. Anakin!
Which is taken from the Phantom Menace.
Oh, it is. It is. Because
you hear someone else.
Yeah. It's okay, I guess. But the problem is now he goes back to Padmé, confesses to her, and she's like, what a perfectly normal human response. And it's like, really, come on.
I'm trying to remember if I don't think that was originally in the film when it was first released.
Okay.
The bit where she's all to be angry, to be human, all that kind of thing. I'm pretty sure when it was originally released, that scene ended with him with the big statement of the Imperial March as he kind of breaks down and then cuts straight to the funeral. But again, trying to even compared to the original trilogy, trying to track down how many different versions of these films there were, because there was a different version for IMAX as well that had like 20 minutes cut out of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know they've messed around with different versions of this, but I mean, the fact is, in the version we're all watching today,
it's
anything she said, anything this, it's like at this point, he keeps doing things you can't come back from. Nothing after this can remotely be a tragedy. I know his mother's died, but disproportionately, he didn't kill everyone from that tent and everything in the 4 tents around it. He wiped out a fucking entire encampment of every single age group. And we're supposed to go, but he was he was under a lot of stress. The guy is an asshole in every possible way. He goes back to a responsible senator, tells her what's happened, and she's like, oh, bless.
Well, she looks kind of troubled, but goes like, yeah, I don't really know what to do about that, sorry.
Yeah, well, I haven't tasted your knob yet, so let's see how that goes first.
Yeah, and then I'll have another tyrannical rant about how if I was in charge of it, if I
But it's just, I mean, he's tone deaf for humour, George Lucas, and he's tone deaf on this character. He just thinks because he's notionally the hero that we will immediately understand all of this, and that the character's lost me already. He's been shit in the entire film, which, you know, may or may not be his fault, but the end result is this character is dreadful and the performance behind it is dreadful. And he has now done something completely unforgivable, and we're supposed to go, oh, poor kid.
Well, yeah, when you spent the whole time moaning, you have to go and like that whole thing when he's like on Love Island or whatever it is. You know, when he's like sort of like when she's trying to explain to him politics about diplomacy, and she's like, yeah, but what if they don't all agree? Well, they should be made to.
They should be made to.
And he's just like, how fucking juvenile are you? Like, you have to be like, this is like basic level kind of understanding of how the world works.
But again, he's delivering it in a slightly petulant cadence because he's trying to ape the speech patterns of somebody else.
But it is kind of as also the beginnings of fascism as well, which that's what I kind of gleaned from that as well, even though he was supposedly joking. That there was a kind of bit of a kind of almost like a Hitler Youth kind of thing going on there.
Yeah.
But
okay, so they're now wildly in love. Then what? Camino comes to an end with the battle with that fight sequence with the headbutt and all that. I don't think that's a bad sequence, actually.
No, it's quite
atmospheric in the rain.
It's quite funny occasionally because everyone just seems to have the worst luck.
Yeah, you think going against the Jedi would be quite hard work, but he makes kind of easy work. Well, not easy work, but it's quite a challenging fight.
Yeah, when he kicks him off the thing, and then he realizes that he's still tied to him, and and his expression is quite funny. And yeah, it's not bad at all. You just have to put up with his little son going.
But my only real issue is how it kind of cuts straight from Anakin and Padmé straight into this, and I would have liked a little bit of breathing room to kind of build up to it.
But again, that's something that this film can't seem to do.
No,
is give any kind of breathing room whatsoever.
It just doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel natural to go straight into like an action scene, like cut straight into actually something else. It just feels like what the fuck. It is kind of cool to see Django versus Jedi, which you'll see again later on. And then he gives chase to him, doesn't he?
He throws a tracker onto it, which I quite like that effect as the tracker sort of grabs it and that. I always think I don't know if I think it's brave or stupid to so closely remind us of a scene from a better Star Wars film.
Yeah.
Part of me thinks, well, that takes balls. You know? And at least they used the sonic blasts, which I think is something different.
Yeah, that sound effect
cool.
in the cinema was amazing.
It's really cool, actually, in a surround sound setup.
Yeah.
That does sound amazing, actually. I was like, whoa, really impressed by that.
Again, it kind of rips off Empire.
Hiding on the rock.
Yeah.
Which is just like hiding on the Star Destroyer.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a quite nice shot when it just kind of drifts into view.
Yeah. And then he ends up on
Geonosis.
He tries to get hold of Anakin. Anakin basically goes to Geonosis to try to help him out.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they go to the Jedi Council first, don't they? And they sort of... Do they?
He tells him about the army of the Republic and Cypher DS and everything else.
Yeah, because he hasn't got enough power.
And he has to boot it through Anakin,
yeah.
and Anakin is on Tatooine rather than Naboo. So that's how that's revealed. But they see that, it's exactly that.
Is that before or after he eavesdrops on Count Dooku and his mates?
Before, I think. I think he's...
Yeah, I think we introduced Count Dooku when he's already captured, aren't we?
No, because he has that conversation with he's leading him around the around the cavern or whatever, and he's got the banking clan and the techno army or guild or whatever, and the trade federation, and they all sit down because I love this guy. There's a guy called Wat Tambor, who's the guy that kind of looks like a frog in a cyborg suit, and he's the one that says halfway through a sentence he stops so he can adjust the dials on his on the front of his.
Oh yeah, it sounds a bit strange, doesn't it?
But the whole thing of tuning radio gives it kind of a slightly retro feel.
Exactly, yeah. It feels very Flash Gordon-y,
which
kind
we've
of thing.
been seeing since that opening scene, so like 1940s.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not all bad by any means. Some of the visuals inside are quite nice.
Yeah,
but as soon as they basically they all get captured,
yeah,
it's a problem from there on.
From the moment Pam and I, from what I understand, this was a bit of a tacked-on sequence as well, where the video game bit.
Oh, I hate that bit.
Where
it really
and the whole
was
droid foundry.
The platform game.
Yeah, and the stamping kind of things, and
it is very much video game.
And again,
that was the bit where I was finally done with the film. That's where I really thought
the obstacle course.
Yeah.
And it's and C-3PO, which we haven't mentioned, but they meet C-3PO.
Oh, yeah, 3PO is even almost as bad as Jar Jar was in the last film.
He does really great. Yeah, I get there needs to be some comic relief, but he really does great. It's like, oh, I'm confused, and later on in the desert, I'm beside myself.
This is such a drag.
Oh, and by the way, R2-D2
but that's
flies.
George's goofy humour. George Lucas would have gone at that.
Yeah,
because that's how
it's not funny. Like this morning, I happened to catch an episode of Yoda's New Adventures, I think, whatever it's called, and obviously featuring Anthony Daniels. Much funny, obviously a different writing team, but it's just like from the sublime to the ridiculous. You know, this is what if you've got given good writing, good comedy dialogue. This is what you can achieve.
It's just George's humour is.
It's like
just
the absolute
goofy.
nadir of it. It's like no.
Yeah. You can't do
obviously
funny.
different team, different medium.
Do you think all the humour in the previous films was out of really good, snappy dialogue?
Yeah, not here.
Back and forth. I'm not saying all the dialogue was amazing, but certainly the Han and Leia stuff was great by and large. And here it's silly sight gags and silly coincidences and dropping things and almost like ironic statements about what's happening because he says it's such a drag while his head's being dragged along. Isn't that funny? It's just poor. It's really, really poor.
And R2-D2 flies. All of a sudden, he's got a jetpack. He didn't do any of that in the original trilogy, but he's doing it now.
Well, it was like 30 years previous or whatever.
I know.
Who knows? I think they did cut a scene out in The Phantom Menace where he did use them briefly as well. But either way, it's weird. But also, I think basically they could have just nipped it really quickly and Padmé and Anakin got in there, got captured, and then done it all very much quicker because it's nonsense.
Busy work again. You say how they're rushing through things, and you're right to some degree, but I'm still left with the perception of nothing happening in this film, despite you being absolutely right on all of that, because it's filled with stuff like this. So you see the running time and you go, fuck me, this is a long film. What's it made up of? Bollocks like this that's got nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, which goes on for what?
At least 5 minutes.
20 minutes. Feels like 20 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes would feel like 20 minutes. I don't know how long it actually is.
And then it gets to that point where that scene where like Chris said earlier, which is a really, I think, a really, really good conceptual scene where, again, bad dialogue, where they do the old, I love you, either I'm going to die, blah, 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 blah. But then the music kind of swells and it comes out and it shows all the kind of the arena and that. And,
I was cringing the first time I saw this at this point, though. And I don't, like you said, that it's not that there's nothing good about it in the individual shots and some of the conception, but I really was like, oh, this is horrible. And all those people who'd slagged off the first one and stuff, I'm thinking, this is just absolute, this is just evidence to back up anyone who ever knocked anything about these prequels to this point.
Yeah, it's all pretty bad. I mean, like don't we get the scene with get a proper introduction to Dooku, don't we?
Dooku basically tells
What do you reckon to
Anakin
this
kind
fight
of
scene?
the truth. Sorry?
Everyone.
What do you reckon to the fight scene?
I don't care.
Oh, yeah, I mean, to be fair, Christopher Lee's pretty good in this.
He's amazing. I just think he just as an individual, like he's a war hero, actor, writer, director, producer, musician, singer, just a general legend in everything he's done. Like he's been Hammer, Bond, Star Wars. Has he done Star Trek? I don't know.
Well, it was a really piss poor
Lord of
Bond
the
film,
Rings.
so
Is there anything he hasn't done? Shakespeare.
He hasn't done you.
My
has he?
wife.
He hasn't done Charlie's wife. He hasn't done Charlie, I don't
Any
think.
media-
Hang on a minute, he must have done Charlie if he hasn't done Charlie's wife.
I've got a metal album he's done.
Yeah.
On vinyl.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
he-
He's just
He
absolutely
was just
legend.
so good,
Oh,
and he
my
has,
fantastic human being.
and he does add a level of gravitas to this film,
He
and
does.
It fucking
This-
needed something by this point because we've
This-
got
No, he's-
like
yeah,
basically
he's good.
whiny teenagers all the way.
yeah, and the scene where he kind of where Obi-Wan is captured and he talks to him. He is, I really like him in that scene, and there's
He kind of
some,
brings a kind of almost a
is-
bit air of, I can't say it, like an air of prestige to the film almost. Because
And-
somebody at the
Which is
level
ironic
that
because
he's-
he did a lot of B-movie dreck in his career as well.
oh yeah,
Compared
It
to
is,
everybody else in this film, it's like having fucking royalty there.
yeah.
I know, it's like every kind of scene that he's in, you must think, oh, the other actor, like, obviously Samuel L. Jackson is a legend, but it's just like, how lucky were you to work alongside Christopher Lee? It's just like, oh,
The thing with Samuel L. Jackson for me though is he is Samuel L. Jackson, and that is just massively distracting to
I
me.
find it quite distracting.
it took me out of the film a little bit. It's just like, oh yeah, I've got someone, it's amazing, but also at the same time, it's
Yeah.
Samuel L. Jackson. It's just like, oh,
He's
it's
quite
like,
a
He's quite a busy actor.
dropping
It's
the
the same
F-bomb all
principle
over
as you go back to something like Apocalypse Now, and they cast Harvey Keitel in it, and they had to get rid of him after a week or two
Yeah,
because he's too active. Whereas Martin Sheen is much better at being passive. Now, a Jedi needs to project an air of calm, almost passivity, and I sort of think he's wrong for it.
yeah.
The action scene's fine,
think-
but perhaps
I
not
think-
for this role.
I
He's a
guess-
brilliant actor, whatever.
I guess. Well, that's the thing. I mean, Pulp Fiction. I think because of that sequence, because of that particular scene that everyone goes on about, where he does the whole quoting the vengeance, blah 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 blah. People look at that and they look at him being good at speechifying and making these big, powerful speeches, etc., etc. I mean, the recent King Kong was basically him doing that all the way through the film to a giant ape.
He didn't have dialogue. He just had speeches. Yeah.
Yeah, monologues. Yeah, he's all right in this, and he gets at least
He is fine, but
yeah, he gets to do his.
he gets to show us all his purple shaft.
Exactly. I
And
kind
when,
of
when he puts it right up to Django's, no, not Django's throat. Who is it? It's one of the Moidians, isn't it? He puts it up to whoever's throat he
no, it
puts
is
it up
Django.
to.
It is Django. Yeah.
That is actually kind of cool. That's the scene those are the sorts of scenes he's made to do.
Well, I've read somewhere, and I can't remember where it is, but there was like a mythology about in terms of the Jedi Council, Yoda is meant to be like the wise or the strongest with the Force, but in terms of actual combat, Mace Windu was meant to be the best Jedi there in terms of actual like lightsaber combat. So in terms of actually being like the badass Jedi, I kind of get why you'd go for.
It's funny.
Sorry.
Yeah, the one thing that didn't ring true is obviously you get a sort of slow reveal of him. So you get a shot of his feet first and some sort of swelling of the music. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, in universe you're introducing Mace Windu, not Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, exactly.
The guy did nothing in the last film. Why should we be going, fucking hell, it's Mace Windu?
Yeah, he doesn't have very much
No,
impact.
actually, what you're playing on is, fucking hell, it's Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really
I
disappointing how he doesn't drop a few MF bombs.
Well, he wouldn't, would he?
No.
So,
But still.
I'm tired of this motherfucking droids and this motherfucking...
Exactly.
I think we were doing that in 1999
Yeah.
when he was cast. But I like monsters. I mean, I like monsters anyway. But I mean, this scene always kind of came across to me as a kind of Ray Harryhausen homage.
I tell you what it is, right? I think it's all very contrived to get them there. I don't like the action sequence that follows. I think they've completely played down all the. There is a compliment coming at the end of this, but they've totally devalued the lightsabers by having them open up every 2 fucking minutes. I don't like the horrible fucking orangey sky that you've got in this, and everything that follows looks terrible. But when they are originally tethered to the posts, and we start the creatures that are in the crowds, the creatures that are sent out to attack them. As far as that goes, I quite liked it.
Yeah, I did as well. I mean, I don't remember being that enthralled at the time, but then I was probably bored stiff by then. So all kind of goodwill just vanished. But yeah, I think with fresh eyes, this is actually pretty decent idea. I think it doesn't help. It just doesn't help with when you got like you finally get Obi-Wan and Anakin back together again, and already the bickering.
Having said that, it was one of the best delivered lines in the film, where he said, "We came here to save you," and he just looks up and goes, "Good job."
Yeah,
yeah, that was quite funny.
That was a great recovery after he went completely the other way.
That was the kind of thing that reminded me of the original trilogy. That's that kind of line you'd imagine being said by like Han.
Definitely, yeah. Good job, kid. It would be delivered differently and it would be articulated differently, but it would have the same spirit, effectively. But it goes on far too long. All the Jedi turn up, and in between we get Natalie's midriff conveniently exposed. And
she gets scratched by a tiger.
A top stitched in such a way that those could look a bit like nipples. It's
the hair done a bit like layers as well.
Terrible banter as well. Like I call it aggressive negotiations.
That's a really bad line.
That the wound she gets from that space tiger, looks quite serious.
It does.
Massive scratches in her back from its claws, and you're just thinking that it's quite funny when she swings and it just kicks it.
Yeah. I did notice. I don't know if it's whether I just missed something, but she kind of like swings and she's like on the middle one. Did she swing to the middle post, or did she kind of swing around and I thought she like swung around and climbed back on top of the post she was on.
I don't know because she swung around and then as it was jumping and kicked it in the stomach.
Yeah.
I don't know how about after that.
It was just one of the things I noticed because when there was a wide shot, she was like on the middle post. I thought Anakin was on that one. So yeah, I just thought I might have missed something unless it was like a continuity error. But anyway, I digress.
Very possibly. I don't think George cares. And then all the lightsaber stuff, and it's quite good when you see when Mace Windu, Samuel Jackson, beheads Jango Fett, and gives this really weird kind of look at what I just did. Look, and then you've got his son just watching from the wings, seeing like, oh my god.
The thing I picked up on was, what was the point in Jango Fett even going down? Because like Mace Windu's taking on that big beast type thing, that kind of like almost like a big elephant type rhino creature, and Jango just thinks to himself, now's a good time to go down and try and take on Mace Windu when he's already had to. I'll try and get involved with that. Oh no, I've got hit by the rhino thing. It just feels a little bit, that doesn't feel like a wise decision.
I don't know. Maybe Dooku offered him extra.
Maybe.
Who knows?
I just watched it and thought, why are you bothering going down there? What's the point? I just don't understand. But anyway,
I think because I'm not particularly into the Boba Fett character, it's much harder to like get me interested in this stuff because I didn't really care about the character he's there to be an analogue of anyway. So it was always like, oh, so what? I'd lost interest in the film by now. Didn't like the look of it. I haven't enjoyed this leading guy. I'm not that interested in the story. And it's like, oh, can we get this finished so we can wait 3 years and get Vader?
Yeah, and then there's the ridiculous bit where they've killed a bunch of Jedi and they're all in the circle and it's all like, okay, you're all going to die there. And Natalie Portman goes, look, and she looks up and this entire space fleet's above her, like
Yeah.
like no one would have noticed.
Yeah.
All these massive
I know.
spaceships and
Around the perimeter, what's it? Around the survivors, a perimeter create. It's like you really are forcing this speech fucking pattern now. So then we get into battle effectively, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, like another Yoda sort of flies in because they get surrounded by all the robots and they ask to
The
surrender.
Jedi do all their fucking flips. We get all the stupid comedy with C-3PO, whose head's been put on the wrong fucking body and all that. And frankly, that goes on for ages, and we could talk about it for ages, but frankly, it's bollocks.
Yeah. So.
And it goes on. It just goes on way too long. The salient point is they end up getting away. Dooku gets away. They end up chasing him. Natalie Portman kind of falls off the craft, but then is all right. So what? And it ends up with Obi-Wan and Anakin versus Dooku.
I just feel, what's the point in this bit? I mean, because it just should go show how they don't work as a team. Anakin is like too gun-ho and then gets knocked out straight away. So
Yeah, that'll teach him.
yeah, all it showcases is how good Dooku is, really. He just goes, yeah, I'm pretty good at being a Sith. I can kick
But the other thing is, they've got. I mean, although George can do whatever he wants and will overreach himself with effects, even he knows there's only so much you can do with the money. So there's only so many full-blooded shots of Christopher Lee doing action shit that they can afford. With the digital face replacement and everything else. So they drop it into darkness as soon as possible.
Well, he was 70 odd, wasn't he? So
Actually, I really like that.
I think it's got its positives, but it is out of necessity that they've done that.
Oh, absolutely. But I think mood-wise, I think it adds an interest. I think it looks good, and I think it goes on for too long. But
again, Anakin's a twat. He's just been trained. He's been trained for how many years, and he just goes steaming straight in. And that's it.
Yeah, after being told we need to work together to defeat him. We can defeat him, but we need to work together. And he goes like, no, straight in, and gets himself. It's just like, oh, you're an idiot. You're an absolute fucking idiot.
It's really, really horrible as any kind of character trait we're supposed to like.
Yeah.
But as they both end up injured, one's missing an arm, the other one's been cut in the leg, Yoda arrives. And this is one of the strangest sequences.
And again, they have a pointless force war, which is like, I'm just going to throw shit at you. Nope, you'll catch it. Okay, fine.
Even the dialogue, he says, we cannot win this through our knowledge of the Force, but our skills with the lightsaber. You think, oh, God,
don't say. It's literally somebody thought, right, give Christopher Lee a line to say. There it is. That was all that scene was there for.
I must admit, the one thing that was kind of cool about that was how Yoda reached for his lightsaber by using just the Force. I kind of like that.
Okay.
But yeah, that's just.
I don't particularly dislike it. It's a strange sequence to me because
it
took us all by surprise. I was sat in the biggest screen of the cinema we were in. I remember being in the back row of this cinema. It was packed. It was opening night, and this happened, and the audience gasped and sort of, I think, went to cheer, and then we realised we weren't American. Do you know what I mean? Everyone kind of went to whoop a bit, and then thought, "Oh, no, very British, won't do that." But there was a definite fucking hell in the crowd, right? And it was exciting. And the next day we could never believe how Yoda moves in this film. And it's just not stood up, and it's not the quality of the effect. It's even the idea. I don't know what we were seeing opening night because I can't
help but think, how else would Yoda fight? He would just jump around the place, wouldn't he?
No, he'd fight like they were like before. He'd fight with the Force. It's almost as if I've always seen as Yoda, almost being above a lightsaber.
I was going to say, I can't imagine him stooping to fight him with a lightsaber
Yeah,
somehow.
because
I mean, in the original trilogy, think about his dark side equivalent, the Emperor. Yeah, when they were going at Luke in the episode 6, he didn't whip out a lightsaber. He didn't need to. He could do force lightning and all that shit.
yeah, and the fact that you see Yoda deflect Dooku's force lightning and just basically.
Like capture it, really. Come on.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh yeah, lightsabers. I don't have a problem with it, to be honest with you.
It's not helped by the fact we're nearly at the end of the film, and I'm just like, I've had enough of it now.
Yeah.
Well, we are pretty much at the end of the film because, and this is what I mean. I mean, when I criticise why nothing happens, I do mean it not in a comparison to Empire or any of it. Well, it's more of a comparison to just film in general. Like you got your last 30 minutes, which is kind of like you're wrapping everything up, and literally nothing happens that matters. Like we could have had this is a 10 minute, 15-minute sequence, and nothing else has actually happened other than he gets away. The only thing we see Yoda have a lightsaber battle. That's pretty much it. So I think it's pretty kind of weak ending in some regards. So yeah, pretty much Dooku gets away, and we start wrapping things up. Then, don't we? Straight away, we start see Palpatine getting the clone, get ready for war.
Yeah, they've got a map of they've basically got the plans for the Death Star.
Oh yes,
they've got.
Does that fit in with Rogue One and things like that? No, I did think
still
that.
would.
I don't think it doesn't bother me.
It doesn't need. There's no reference needed though.
No, that is pure fan service. It's like, what's the point for that? What?
Yeah. Oh well, it is what it is. Anakin and Padmé marry back at Lake Como. What else?
I like her headdress in the scene. It's very beautiful.
Yeah.
She does. I think she basically has a change of costume for every single scene. But I love. Well, I love like the outfit and the costumes of the Star Wars universe anyway. But yeah, I love all the outfits that she wears. It's very cool. And there's a lot of like, obviously, I'll say Leia callback. That's the wrong word. References to Leia as well, which is very, very clever, I think.
Yeah. That's about it, isn't it, folks?
Pretty much. They get married, and it's like yeah.
I've written the end in very big letters.
Yeah.
At the end of my notes, like, oh, thank
He
God.
gets a robot arm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, robot arm.
I mean, final thoughts.
Find out about the ultimate weapon. What could that be?
I mean, final thoughts from me. It was a big disappointment at the time. There was still always that hope that episode 3 would like wildly turn it around, you know. So I didn't walk out hating the series or anything like that. It's just, you know, in some respects I'd prefer to wait a bit more for these things, but it is tough to wait for 3 years and then it comes out like this. I was hoping to really get drawn into Anakin's story, and I expected it to have this sort of almost buddy cop element to it. And it really didn't. And I didn't think the love story would be good, but I didn't think it was going to be that bad, where we're actively laughing and or cringing at all of the dialogue. It's a very poor film. It's not entirely worthless. There are some scenes in it that look better than I remember. But unfortunately, as I said last week with The Phantom Menace, although The Phantom Menace wasn't as badly hurt by it as this film, they're using all this technology years before it's really ready. And so it still stands for me with its awkward dialogue and poor lead as the weakest of the Star Wars films.
Yeah, I agree with that, Dave. I mean, I think you hit on a point I was actually going to make. This should have played like as a buddy Jedi film for the most part, and it could have been really, really fun and engaging with a sweet love story behind it. But you know, it's pretty pants for most of it. I think the main disappointment from it, the main fail of this, is the fact that it could have been great. It had the opportunity and potential to be great. There was so much going for it, and it is just let down in pretty much every aspect, other than like some visuals. You know, from and from the concept, it's just let down by a really poor script and really poor direction. And that's the ultimate tragedy in this film that should be in the plot, but it's not.
I don't think this film could ever have had any chance of being great because it was already hampered by what he did last time. I enjoy the film. It's terrible. It's terrible in a lot of ways. I like a lot of things about it. I think it looks great, certainly, as I mentioned, and there's kind of things I think are reasonably well done, or pretty much on the technical side of things rather than anything else. But the fact is that, again, trying to tell these massive stories, and it's a fairly large story because while Anakin's fall is the main crux of it, he's also shown the fall of the Republic and the rise of Palpatine and all that business as well. And he's essentially trying to tell all these stories, but begin it with something that has very little relevance to how the end it's going to come out at the end. It's just killed it before it's even had a chance to start. As it is, it's not a very good film. Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think. I think with what happened with the Phantom Menace and the fact that was his decision to make that the beginning, it just kind of it was.
It should have started somewhere else. Really, it should have started where he was like already. I mean, it's kind of weird how. I mean, I think Dave mentioned before about like in terms of the Jedi lifestyle, like taking like these kids at such a young age into this life, and the idea that to be a Jedi you have to be trained at a very young age for otherwise you are vulnerable to turn to the dark side. Whereas,
yeah,
I
can understand because at the end of the day, it is supposed to be a religion. And also so you've got that, and it's the same thing. Kids are, whether you want to call it indoctrination or not, it does happen with children all over the world still, as well as martial arts as well. A lot of kids really do start at a really young age for martial arts. So to get that,
but they aren't denied sex and love for the rest of their lives.
No,
are they?
I get that in terms of it's best to start early, but in terms of it's essential, like The thing is, it wasn't a problem in the original trilogy, and it was only sort of brought up here. So you think, well, why give yourself that hurdle? Why?
But he did say in the original trilogy that he was too old. That was given as an initial pushback to not train Luke. But the whole Jedi, again, one of the things with the entire prequel trilogy is the Jedi as a concept is incredibly flawed and is very different to what we were led to expect from what we had gleaned from the original trilogy, be it the characters and kind of what we had been told. And again, so from that with Anakin, for me, it always should have started with Anakin maybe being a pilot, something like that, being Luke's kind of age, having an adventure like Luke, that kind of similar thing. And then, because they parallel the same kind of lines, and then in this film, they kind of paralleled it the same way, but where Luke said no, Anakin says yes, because he really should have turned in this film, again, because it's utterly rushed in the next film, because it's
almost funny next week how badly it's done.
It is, because it's just like, oh, change to the dark side, sorry. It is literally a snap decision.
And it doesn't help some line delivery by Ian McDiarmid, does it? He says a line that made like cinemas and giggles, and it still makes me laugh now.
Unintentionally funny, but I think next week he's a great actor, and I do think Senator Palpatine / Emperor is like one of the most creepiest characters in the Star Wars universe. But I do get next week he does descend into pantomime villain.
But he also gives, for my money, the best acting of his.
Definitely.
Star Wars career.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's definitely one of the most memorable aspects of the prequels.
Yeah, as the Emperor is like, utterly terrifying, but I just kind of feel there are aspects of it where he's punto villain a little bit with like lightning hands and all the rest of it. But no, undoubtedly superb performance and just one of the most terrifying characters in all of cinema.
I just wondered how it would play if they didn't try and keep it like this bullshit mystery. Like, we as the audience not like are still guessing like, oh, who's this Darth Sidious? It's like, well, we know who it is. It's like you're not even trying to, if when Dooku lands and meets with Darth Sidious, what if it's actually just like Palpatine, and we're kind of like, oh, so we the tension's already there. We kind of like we know not to trust him. We know what's going on. We can see it.
Make it like Columbo, not Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I can't really add to what you really said, to be honest. Yeah, please go back to the beginning of this podcast to find out what I think.
You loved it, didn't you?
Okay. Well, we'll use the end of the podcast to learn then.
We'll do that Wayne's World thing where we go diddle-doo, 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 diddle-doo.
Party on, dude.
Hush, Chris, I want to learn.
In a fun way.
From
I feel bad. Yet
Jedi
again,
Master
one
Becca
fact I have is not very fun. So
they don't have to be, provided we're wiser people.
Also, some of these, Charlie, you may want to correct. I'm not 100% certain, but these are from various aspects.
I love the confidence you go to our listener base with.
Well, no, these are actually mainly from the Star Wars website this time. So
I said this I said this on one of our previous contracts. If you're not sure, just say it with total fucking confidence.
Yeah.
and
then anyone who contradicts you is a nerd.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
You saw that like as a derogatory term.
It is.
It was supposed to be there, but only in that.
Carry
Or is
on.
it trendy to be a geek?
I'll just call them. No,
Yes,
you're wrong.
carry
You
on.
need to recheck your facts and just carry on regardless. If you know, you're like, oh, I've clearly done my research.
Damn you all! I want to learn.
Fun fact number one of the many ideas for the character who would become Dooku was actually a female Sith. Fact number two, not very fun.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that's quite cool. It'd be interesting to see her somewhere along the line.
Just occurred to me, why didn't they? Somewhere in there.
Have we had a female Sith before?
Cast Helen Mirren. There you are.
No, but they did it. They did it in the animated series because they used like the concept art and stuff. Because they did like a lot of concept art for Darth Maul and stuff as a female as well, and it was really cool. I think that possibly the reason they didn't do it because it was so scary, because it really did look creepy. So they used it in like when he did like the Clone Wars series and stuff, which actually shows Anakin and Obi-Wan in a much kind of better light than this.
Anyway, fact number two. The way Palpatine is granted emergency powers is obviously very similar to how Hitler rose to power in 1930s Germany. Again, granted emergency powers and went on to do what he did, which is quite horrible. Anyway, fun fact number three. Which is more fun.
Controversial, that Becca.
It's not very fun, is it? This is like, it's like when somebody dies. It's not fun.
I'm glad you editorialised in case people thought we thought that was great.
Yeah, that was quite horrible.
Like, he was quite talented, wasn't he? Look at that. What an achievement.
I wouldn't even say he was a talented artist. No, mediocre at best. Fun fact number three.
Experiences with Nazis, please write to us at talk@gmail.com.
Oh dear. Right, that's going to open the floodgates. Anyway. Yeah, as we mentioned earlier, fun fact number three, this is one of the few Star Wars films where the camera pans up. Fun fact number four, Amidala is actually quite a crack shot, obviously foreshadowing how amazing Leia will be. Fun fact number five, we talked earlier about the Jedi archives that's based on the library at Trinity College in Dublin, and that's why it looks so beautiful. And that's my 5 Star Wars facts.
That's 4/5 fun, folks.
Again, all gleaned from StarWars.com.
Don't name your source. You meant to know it's in your infinite wisdom.
previously
Hang on a minute.
elsewhere on the
You
internet.
started off with Charlie. You might want to correct these. So you're saying Charlie knows better than StarWars.com?
He does.
High praise.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not sure I can live up to that.
Yeah. Yeah, he sees the George Lucas interviews where he goes, "Well, when I directed this," and Charlie goes, "No, he didn't." that's their gospel because Charlie knows better. No, it wasn't. It was the guy who did Confessions of a Driving Instructor.
Oh no, I was having to think about the one like where the camera pans up. I think where else? I was like Rogue One, or I couldn't remember if it was Rogue One, or
But Rogue One would panning up from what? There's no crawl.
Well, I know that's it exactly, but the camera could have gone down to see something else. We don't know, or was it the other Star Wars?
Cameras
Star Wars
have
movie.
gone in an upwards direction in Star Wars films. We're talking relative to the crawl. And
I
the
know,
Wizard
but I
Fight
just mean, even though there isn't a crawl,
How would
this
they
time there's a
ever
crawl
look
and it still
at
goes
the
up.
sky? How would they look at the sky?
You can go left, right, up, down, any direction.
As soon as the ship takes off, that's the last we ever see of it.
I feel like even if this one after the crawl, that still goes up.
I don't think
Oh,
in
God.
I don't think in Rogue One does it. I don't think the camera moves at the beginning, does it?
No, this is why I think it might need a correction.
There's a ship very slowly coming into shot, like almost like
Yeah,
a
but it doesn't really
eclipse.
move.
But it's like Shadow of the Rings. Make it like a Star Destroyer.
When we come to do it, I'll keep an eye
Yeah,
open,
got
and then
that.
it'll be a fun fact. But no, that's what I meant in
Yeah.
terms of correction. Charlie might go, "Oh no, in this film the camera did this that I might not have picked up on," and that's what I meant anyway.
Okay.
So to
That's
you.
clear, folks.
Anyway, where can we be found on social media?
You can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976 on Twitter.
You can find me at Cinematronics on Twitter, and you can also look at this podcast, as well as the Cinematronics podcast, which me and Dave reviewed the summer films on cinematronics.co.uk.
And last summer's films as well.
Yes, that was like the episode after that we did. Actually, no, we did another one, didn't we?
Well, no, you interviewed me in the middle just to get a fresh voice
Yes.
on the podcast.
As if people did that, yeah. As if people didn't have like enough of me and you chatting shit.
Basically, if Chris had presented This Is Your Life, I'd have had about 57 read books after the first few months. Every week. Surprise! Oh, great.
Yes.
This is your life.
That's what I was thinking of.
Charlie,
still
what about
do
you,
that?
buddy?
You can find me at Movie Drone on Twitter if you wish.
Sounds very enigmatic.
No, it isn't. He's just told you exactly where you can find it.
An enigmatic way.
It's
if
not
you
that
wish.
enigmatic. How would I decode that?
I highly recommend that you do follow everybody on Twitter because they're all oracles of knowledge and they have lots to say.
That's quite a task. I highly recommend you follow every Twitter account.
Everybody.
But not Piers Morgan.
No, don't follow him or
Except Piers Morgan.
and Donald
or-
Trump. He's an ass. No, obviously don't follow
Controversial.
everybody. Just follow us lot because we're the important ones.
That sounds very Anakin, that, doesn't it, Becca? No, you should follow us and only us.
Don't
Only
follow
us,
the
nobody
president.
else.
Follow the important ones.
You've gone from everybody to 4 people.
Yeah. Screw everybody else. We're the most important ones. You can follow us on Twitter at Expect Us to Talk. And also you can find
And
us
other
on
places.
iTunes and YouTube. And if you do find us on iTunes, don't forget to give us a 5-star review. As it helps us to rank higher in the charts and attract more lovely listeners.
And some crap ones.
Yeah, they don't have to be lovely, as long as they
I
listen.
don't give a shit.
Who cares?
If you're scum but you download us, that's fine.
I mean, they could be Nazis.
we have no
really,
shame in
that's
that.
quite horrible.
If you're in prison, you're paying your debt to society. Respect.
Can't win. Oh dear.
Although if you're listening to this on your phone, fucking declare it. You're not supposed to have a phone in your cell. Get an iPod
Legally.
in a cake with the filing. fucking thing as well.
Yeah, that thing they're not making anymore. Yeah, the iPods.
What, cakes?
Well, they are. They're still making the
Do they make cakes anymore? What? Did I miss
they're
this?
still making cakes and stuff that files stuff.
Did I miss this memo?
Yeah, they're still making
Yeah.
files.
Well, down to Reeves. What the bloody hell?
That's going to be awful for prisoners. They'll just have to be handed the sort of filing and saws with no cakes to hide them in.
It's a padded envelope.
Really big envelope.
Do you know, I think next week will be tremendous because it's going to link to a classic series of films, which means Becca.
Do you expect us to talk or return with Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith?